Every time you walk past the glass, it comes over. When it sees you, it swims in circles at the front of the tank. When you leave, it quietly drifts back to its corner. Most people might just say, "It comes when it's hungry," and move on. But have you ever asked yourself this? Does it actually recognize you? Or does it just see you as a source of food? Today, we're going to talk about how the goldfish is not a mindless, memoryless decoration aimlessly swimming behind glass. We'll explore an intelligence shaped by thousands of years of history, evolutionary engineering etched into every curve of its body, and an inner world far more complex than you might think. But here's what really matters. By the end of this video, I'll share the one sign that most goldfish owners miss. The moment your fish no longer sees you as just a source of food, but as a real part of its world, a presence it accepts. Until then, let's uncover the true identity of this little golden swimmer together. The story of the goldfish begins long ago in China. During the Chinese dynasties dating back to the 3rd and 4th centuries AD, fishermen noticed something unusual in the ordinary silver carp they raised for food. Some of them had shimmering red or orange scales. They didn't eat those fish. They separated them. By the Tang Dynasty, these colorful fish were already decorating imperial garden ponds. During the Song Dynasty, owning yellow-colored fish was a privilege reserved only for the imperial family. Common people could only keep orange ones because yellow was considered the color of the emperor. This selective breeding continued for a full 1,000 years. During the Ming Dynasty, fish were first raised indoors in porcelain containers, and those flowing fins, bubble-like eyes, and silk-like tails all emerged during this period. The goldfish you feed by hand today is the result of placing 1,000 years of human artistry on top of a million-year-old wild carp heritage. Its color is not random. It's selected. Its fins are not accidental. They're designed. When you stand in front of your aquarium, you are actually looking at history itself. The body of a goldfish is a sensory machine you shouldn't underestimate. The human eye combines 3 primary colors. A goldfish has 4: red, green, blue, and ultraviolet. It perceives changes in light underwater, vibrations from the surface, and the movements of other living beings in a spectrum invisible to us. When you sit in front of the tank, it sees you in a completely different way than you see it. As a member of the carp family, the goldfish has a special anatomical structure called Weberian ossicles. These 4 tiny bones connect the swim bladder to the inner ear. Sound waves from the outside world vibrate the swim bladder, and those vibrations are transmitted directly to the inner ear through these bones. In other words, the goldfish both hears and feels the water. Sounds in the room, footsteps, a closing door, reach the fish as vibrations. Pretty remarkable abilities, right? And then there's the lateral line system running along its body. Tiny sensory cells that detect even the slightest pressure changes and shifts in water currents. A hand movement, an approach, a shadow. Before you even notice, it has already sensed everything. If you have more than one goldfish in your tank, you're not just looking at fish swimming together. There's an invisible order at work. Goldfish are naturally a schooling species, but that doesn't just mean swimming together. When food arrives, who approaches first? Which area belongs to whom? Who can cross whose path? These are all governed by unwritten rules. The larger dominant fish takes the best position. The smaller ones constantly measure distance. If one fish finds itself in a weaker position, it adjusts immediately. During breeding periods, the male relentlessly chases the female. This isn't just instinct. It requires persistence, rhythm, and continuity. They also learn from one another. Social learning has been documented in goldfish. When one fish learns something, others observe and learn from it. That brief pause in your aquarium, that sudden change of direction, that moment of waiting in a corner, none of it is random. It's the moves of a silent chess game. The 3-second memory myth has no clear origin. But one thing is certain, it's wrong. In experiments, goldfish were trained to associate a specific sound with food, then released into their natural environment for 5 months. When the sound was played again after 5 months, the fish returned to the place where they had first learned the association. 5 months, not a few seconds. Other experiments have shown that goldfish can learn to press levers, swim through hoops, and even respond differently to specific colors. Long-term memory, spatial memory, social learning, all are scientifically documented. Researcher Cullen Brown, who has studied fish intelligence for years, says this: "We've known since the 1950s that goldfish have quite good memories. No matter what people think, these fish are genuinely intelligent." There are also observations suggesting that goldfish can distinguish their owner from other people. When strangers approach the tank, they retreat to a corner. When the owner approaches, they come to the front. This connection isn't simply whoever comes gives food. It works through recognizing faces, remembering behavioral patterns, and responding accordingly. You can test this with your own fish. If your goldfish keeps returning to a particular corner of the aquarium, that place is more than just the front of a decoration. Researchers have discovered specialized cells in the goldfish brain that encode spatial location. These cells constantly update the fish's position relative to the tank's walls, corners, and distinct objects. In other words, the goldfish maintains a mental map of its aquarium. Which corner is safe? Which area is exposed and vulnerable? Which zone is associated with food? Everything is processed internally. That's why a plant, a rock, or a cave decoration isn't just aesthetic. It has a functional meaning for the fish, a place to hide, an escape point, a resting area. In a very large and empty aquarium, a goldfish can become stressed because undefined boundaries are perceived as unpredictable and dangerous. Every return to that small corner is like going back to the only safe harbor in its world. And here we are, the sign I promised at the beginning. The strongest sign that your goldfish recognizes you isn't pressing a lever or swimming through a hoop. The strongest sign is the disappearance of its flight distance. Like all prey animals, goldfish have an instinctively defined escape distance from anything they perceive as a threat. No matter how slowly an unfamiliar presence approaches, the fish will retreat before that boundary is crossed. This is instinctive. It's not thought about, it just happens. If your goldfish approaches instead of fleeing when you put your hand in the tank, lightly touches your fingers, or calmly hovers in front of you while you stand still at the glass, that's the moment it ignores that instinct. It's the moment it has excluded you from its threat calculation. This is where trust begins, where instinct falls silent. In that moment, your fish has made a decision about you, and that decision carries more meaning than you might think. The next time you turn on the aquarium lights and that orange shadow comes to the front of the glass, you'll see it differently now. Because there's not just a fish there. There's a mind shaped by 1,000 years of selection, an evolutionary engineering marvel, and a being that has chosen to trust you. What signs does your goldfish show you? Does it approach your hand, come to the front of the glass, or still keep its distance? Write it in the comments. I'll read everyone. If you're curious about the next fish I'll talk about, like this video and subscribe. See you in the next deep dive.